In March, it is frozen ground, it is snow-covered, it is windy, and it is cold. These are tiny little villages. The smallest, they go down to just a couple hundred. But the travel between them is impossible. You have to wait for everything to freeze, and then it's travel by snow machine is the only way. The Yupik, they are very, very, very remote people, and a lot of those people have never left. They have to rely on each other to be able to get through the storms. The first trip we did was 5 or 6 years ago. There was a few veterinarians and several students. Originally we're there to prevent rabies, but the very first village that we went to is so dark and the suicide rates are high, the children were needy, and we just needed to go back. And so we started going back every year since.
3 years ago, I got to go on my first Alaska trip. At the time when we went to Hooper Bay, there had been some recent suicides in the village. We got to where we didn't even talk about dog bite and rabies prevention, but we wanted to get to know the people and to hear their stories and then to be able to pray with them to comfort them. People broke down, and I remember getting ready to leave Hooper Bay, and every single kid in the village was in a line to give us a hug before we left. Each trip poses its different levels of adventure. It's Alaska, so the weather is totally unpredictable. We always get to Bethel and we kind of go, this is where we'd like to go. What if weather doesn't allow us? Let's try somewhere else. There's always an element of surprise.
Whoever gets these back to think will go in through here and the others will go in through the forward door.
And how long have you been flying?
Since I was a little kid.
How long have you been flying for you?
For you, I just started when they opened you back up this fall.
It is absolutely a faith experience and a faith journey. Especially with the Alaska trips, we have our flights up and we have our flights back, but the middle is however God's going to use us and being willing for that to happen.
As soon as we got into Tuksuk, we were met at the airstrip by someone that Angie, our connection here in Alaska, had set up to come help us with a sled and some four-wheelers. So we loaded up all of our stuff and came over here to the City Hall where we've set up our temporary clinic.
Intake, surgery, recovery, eating room. Wait, we can take everything though and just make a couple pilots on this table.
There is an intake form here. Anybody coming in for surgery needs to have this release form signed.
So we're getting the vaccines ready for the students, and it'll all be prepped and ready for them to go. So they're not waiting around for vaccines, and we could try to move everything smoothly and just keep the flow going.
Lord, thank you for getting us here safely, and I ask you to help us to bless the people in this village as we go out into the village and as we touch people here. Keep the dogs safe as we work on them, and use us. In your precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Once we've got all of that set and the clinic's up and running, we'll start sending groups out into the village, usually groups of 2 or 3 people. They'll take with them some dewormers, some vaccines, and pamphlets about CVM. Do you know how old he is?
He was born on New Year's Eve.
It's been a really good way to integrate ourselves into the community. You get those houses where people are so happy that you came and are so open to talking to you. So there's always that chance that you're going to have someone that just completely lets you into their life. And so, it's exciting every time you knock on the door.
We use animals as a way into people's lives to really get to know them and to pray for them.
Just lend them strength to be there for their family even though they battle their own addictions. You're stronger than all of that.
It's amazing how much people will share, and it just builds trust between them and veterinary medicine.
Amen.
Thank you.
Watching the students going out into the villages, knocking on people's doors, talking to the families, learning a little bit about them. It's really neat to see how God has used them through these trips.
This is my first Alaska trip in which I've played more of a leadership role as a veterinarian. I started out early in veterinary school going on these trips, and it's neat to see your growth each year in ways that you can be a part of the team.
My life was changed as a student. Seeing students graduate and now developing into those leadership roles, it's just pretty awesome to step back and just watch it happen.
So we are getting ready to leave Tuksuk, which is one of the villages where we've worked, and we're getting ready to split. And we're actually going to be traveling by snow machine. Dr. Hopgood's going to lead one, and then I'm going to lead the other.
When we arrived at Night Mute, we had a bit of a plan. We had people who were organizing us to be at the community center downtown. When we showed up, there was a pile of snow in front of the door. There was no heat. The door was locked. We had no key. So we've needed prayer a lot this trip, and I think that in talking to God, we've had a lot of opportunities that maybe wouldn't have otherwise presented themselves. And I think that's been essential to this trip. So we ended up being able to talk to the principal of the school, and they gave up their gym for us to use, and everyone just sort of mobilized in a way that we had no expectation of that happening. And before we could even put our bags down, we had a line out the door of people who wanted to talk to us and wanted to bring their dogs in, and it turned around so quickly.
I grew up here in Night Mute, and I was born here. And I lived here for 24 years before I left the village. Back when I was growing up, things were very different. My dad traveled by dog sleds all the time. We didn't have any snowmobiles yet. He used to take me out ice fishing on the dog sleds too. It was awesome. I miss those times.
In the villages where the culture and language is intact, it is amazing. They respect their elders. They do these amazing dances about their hunting. They respect of the animals. But the villages that have lost that are where the suicide rates are higher, and there is a greater amount of alcoholism and drug addictions. So trying to keep the cultures alive and really moving will help, I think, in the long run with how the villages operate.
Ever since I remember, alcohol is always there. I was drinking for about 3 years. The very last of those 3 years, I almost got really bad. I got to a point where I was getting really depressed, to where I just got to a point where I didn't want to live no more because it was things were falling apart.
So a lot of these communities have a lot of problems with drug and alcohol abuse and family members that are away for health reasons or for abuse reasons. And so when people are open enough to be able to pray with us, that is a lot of the prayer requests that we get. So there's a lot of need for us here to bring hope and to bring faith into these communities, because a lot of people don't have that, and they have a lot of hardships here, and in order to leave a lasting impact, that's the spiritual aspect, and that's us praying with people and going into their homes and getting involved in their lives and finding out what they need faith for. That's more important to me.
So I start reading the Bible, and the more I read, He opened his arms, he came to me and said, "Just get up, let's go. You have a life ahead of you." I said, "Okay, I believe I can turn my life around. I believe I can do this."
We have to continue to go back. We have to talk to the people, develop those relationships. Because every village we've gone back to, the kids will remember us. The adults will remember us. So it becomes a long-term mission through short-term trips. Every one of us has a gift or a skill, whether it's to minister at home or it's to go out to the ends of the earth. There's always animals that need help, but it's the people that we're there for. So the important thing is they're not animal trips, they're people trips. And you might get some animal work done in the process. It is veterinary medicine at its best. It's what God wants us to do, but He wants us to do it with Him in the middle. And that is our calling.